So now let's talk a little bit about our desktop itself. So that's this, right? That's this empty area. We talked a little bit about the dock already, and we mentioned the menu, but we'll get into the menu more in an upcoming video. So this is our desktop, right? And it's sort of a place to leave things that you will probably want to work on again frequently, or that you're doing like currently, right? So it's a place that's easy to access things. That being said, you don't want everything here. So as I showed already, you have like a documents area, right, on your computer. So here we can click on documents, right? We have these, we have downloads, we have different places that we can put things. Now the things that we're working on right now, those are the things that make sense to have on your desktop, right? And to sort of limit it to those, or the things that you might access frequently. So what might I want to put on here? So maybe I want to put some of my resources that I use for programming onto my desktop for easy use, right? So here's one, and there's one, and there's one, and there's one, and there's one, and I'm quickly getting quite a few, aren't I? Let's see, is that one? No, that's not one. Any more? There's one. There's one. That's one. That's a folder of more resources, and another one, and some more. And I now have a lot of stuff on my desktop. Oh, I missed one. There's one. All right. Oh, and maybe I want my processing application on my desktop. And was there anything else? I think I have a processing folder in here that can go with that, right? So now I have a whole bunch of stuff on my desktop, and this looks kind of messy. Now, I can tell it to sort, right? So what I did was I right-clicked, right? So if you right-click, you have some options. If your mouse isn't right-clicking, it probably can. Some of the really, really, really old mice couldn't, but pretty much all the current ones can. It might just not be enabled right now, so we'll talk about that later. But to right-click, even if it's not enabled, you can hold Control on your keyboard and click, and that will give you the same menu. I could tell it to sort, or I could tell it to clean up, and that's a little bit better. It's still a little bit of a mess, and it puts some things in sort of some weird places, right? And there's still a lot of stuff on here. So maybe instead of having all of this stuff, all of these books, maybe I just want to have one folder, right? So once again, I use a right click, so I can right click on my mouse or hold Control on your keyboard and click. And I can put all of these into there, right? So I'm going to drag them in there, right? Now drag these in there. And I can rename this. So instead of untitled folder, I can either press return on my keyboard to rename it, or I can do like a slow, like a really slow double click, like super, super slow. So maybe programming books, and I can put that maybe there, and I've got processing and the actual application there. Now, programming books, if you noticed, I didn't just drag books in there, I also drag a folder into there. So if I open that, you can see the different books in here, and you can see a folder in here, right? So folders can have more folders inside, right? And we call that like nesting. And I could create another folder, and inside of there could be another folder, and there could be multiple folders. So you can sort of set this up to a way that you might want. For students, what's probably a good idea, let's drag that to the trash. Oh, so I can trash this by either dragging it down to my trash can, or I can right click and tell it move to trash. Either way is fine. They both do the same thing. For students, you might want to create maybe like a folder for one of your classes, or maybe classes in general. And in there, you might decide to have a folder for each class. So design, and maybe art, or English, or the different classes, right? So those are different things that you might think about when you're organizing your computer. Now right now you might not have a lot on here, and that's okay, because I had all those programming books, right? So what can you sort of play with? So let's talk about another command that we can do on our keyboard really quickly. We talked about renaming by pressing return when we have a folder selected. We talked about right-clicking by holding Control and clicking. We can also do a screenshot. So screenshots on the Mac are really easy. Do Command, Shift, and 3, and that'll give me the whole screen. We can see it down here. I can either wait for it to go away, or I can just click and hold and drag to the right, and that will, by default, put it on my desktop. Or if I do it again and I click and hold, you can see there's some other options here as well, right? So I'll just tell it to save to my desktop again. Alright, so let's take some pictures of a few other things. In addition to Command Shift 3, I can also do Command Shift 4, and that will give me a little crosshair, which allows me to choose what I want to take a picture of. So I could take a picture of basically what icons I have on my desktop instead of the whole thing. I could take a picture of my dock down here. And I could also take a picture, I think, of my Launchpad now that I've reorganized it in the previous video. So I could do Command Shift 4, or I could do Command Shift 3. It's basically the whole thing. So instead of cropping it down to almost the whole thing, I'll just do Command Shift 3. And so now I have a pretty fair bit of screenshots here. So maybe I want to make a screenshot folder now. And that might be a decent idea for you to do, since you may not have all the different programming books or other files on there yet. So just for practice, I mean, of course you probably don't want to keep these, but for practice, you can go ahead and take those same screenshots and create a folder and drag them in there. Now, of course, we have a new icon up here, so maybe I need a new screenshot with those. I could open my screenshot folder, and I could screenshot this as well. And there's a few other neat little keyboard tricks that we can do that we'll talk about in future videos, but I think that's enough for now. So play with some of those things and try it out. Try taking some of the same screenshots that I took as well, just to get familiar with a little bit of the way the Mac and the desktop works, as well as the shortcut.